if you've been following my Facebook page or my Instagram, you'll notice I've been posting the months of November based on the years that I have every few days. And just the other night, I did the November 1996 magazines. And I didn't have this magazine as a teenager. I missed out on this one. So this one was new to me. I hadn't seen any photos inside, hadn't read any stories yet. So it was like, the first time seeing it, which was kind of neat. The other ones that I showed in the November 96 photo, I actually read and owned all those magazines as a teenager. So this one was new to me and exciting. And I actually came across an interesting story in here. If I can get right here. So this is, if you can see it here, that is a story on, actually, let me try to do this better. I got two of these. Maybe that might help with it. So we can see it. There you go. That looks a little better, I guess. Not the greatest, but good enough for right now. This is a photo story and on the NWA's event that they had apparently at an outdoor truck stop. And it had a match involving Ian Rotten and Madman Pondo in a match which would soon be titled the Death Match, right? I mean, you have, they're on mouse traps, they're on broken glass, they're on barbed wire boards, they're on light bulbs, and anything else that you can think of that a death match is. That is what Ian Rotten and Madman Pondo did in this particular match right here, seen in the photos. Now, I know the reason why I know it's an NWA show is because it says right here, coming soon to an arena near you, not if the bigwigs in the NWA have their way. The match between Ian Rotten and Madman Pondo was so violent that they'd like you to forget it. Fortunately, our photographer was there to record the gore. So this is unique. It's interesting because, as you all know, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but as some of you may know, that Ian Rotten ended up leaving ECW in 95, and I guess this is 96, so he must have been doing indie shows, including the NWA. He eventually started his own promotion called IWA Mid-South, which pretty much based a lot of their matches on this style of match. The death match tournaments, or just death matches in general, the hardcore violence, stuff that was like even more extreme than what ECW would put on you. I never remembered seeing ECW do a style of match like any of these that you see in these photos here. So Ian Rotten took it to another level with IWA Mid-South, and of course Combat Zone Wrestling as well was created and kind of based their company on that style of wrestling as well. And still to this day, which such organizations like Game Changer Wrestling, I guess they do that kind of stuff too, where like Nick Gage and such are appearing. This kind of match never spoke to me. It never connected with me. It was interesting for a brief moment to see. I have a DVD that I downloaded years ago off a torrent site that RF Video put out, something about Blood of the Millennium or something like that. And there was a few IWA Mid-South matches or moments on that DVD. And of course it involves Ian Rotten for the most part. And it just seemed it was shocking, right? Like, yeah, the gore is shocking at first. You see, it's like, wow, that's crazy. I can't believe they're doing that. But in these deathmatch tournaments, when the next match is the exact same, followed by another match that's the exact same, it just gets kind of redundant and repetitive and boring. And the shock value wears off super fast because you know what's going to happen. And that's the problem with these matches now, that the violence has been upped so high, because what can they do anymore in these matches that fans haven't seen? Especially the fans who are actual fans of this style of wrestling. If you want to call it wrestling, it's tough what you'd want to call it. I mean, yeah, they do moves and such, but it's just a lot of bloody, gory stuff. And it's just, there's a lot of no rhyme or reason for it. There's Ian Rotten there on the microphone, and more moves being done on those. What is that? Pondo showed he has little regard for his own physical well-being when he dove into the pit field with glass just to get to Rotten, and he couldn't resist bringing one strand of the barbed wire into the ring. So Madman Pondo is really well known for this style of wrestling, either through Combat Zone Wrestling or IWA Mid-South or anywhere there's a death match. Madman Pondo was probably going to be in it. This may be the only actual story that I've ever read of Madman Pondo in the Stanley Weston, Bill Apter style wrestling magazines. Probably the only photos you're ever going to see too. Like I said, this magazine didn't cover this style of wrestling. I don't remember ever reading an IWA Mid-South story in any of these magazines, except for perhaps in the PWI at the end when they had the arena reports. And if fans were at an event, they would send in who won and who lost and who wrestled each other and all that. And sometimes, stuff like IWA Mid-South or Combat Zone Wrestling would be there and you could read what happened. But the photos or the stories inside the magazine just weren't there for those promotions, and probably because of stuff like this. So I'm actually shocked to see that this kind of wrestling actually made it in one of these magazines, and with a story and photos to boot, right? That's kind of crazy to think that. This definitely wasn't NWA's show because it's talking about Dennis Karlzuel. What's his name? Carl's. I can never pronounce his last name. Karlzuel? Carlos? I don't know. You know who I'm talking about. The guy who ran the NWA. He's the one that was upset when Shane Douglas threw down the belt at ECW in '94. But yeah, it has his name in here, and in him saying that this will never happen again. Ian Rotten says that NWA has a problem with him, and they're afraid that he'll be NWA World Champion and represent the company, and that's why he's not welcome back. So I really don't know. Was IWA Mid-South created based on this story and this match for the NWA? I don't follow an IWA Mid-South enough to know. I don't really know the history of it, the legacy of it. So anyone out there who's watching this, if you are an IWA Mid-South fan and have any, memory of when it started, let me know in the comments, because this was 1996. This match took place, so perhaps IWA Mid-South was created not too long after this. I don't really know, but still, it's neat to see it in the magazine, even though I'm not a fan of it totally. But it is neat to see that it did get some notice by the magazine writers, publishers, photographers, what have you, But yeah, I'm not was never a big fan of this wrestling. Like I said, it's cool for the first 5 minutes and then it wears off because they keep doing the same thing. And you only see so many body slams into thumbtacks and light bulbs, and now they've upped the game. They have like razor blades and such, and it's just freaking like that's the Japanese death matches. They've upped the game and they brought it over to America and really changed the way that the death match tournaments are seen and done. So that's pretty crazy. I can't believe they're still doing these matches every so often in tournaments or just on shows. So yeah, this is it. This is the first time of my memory of seeing the Stanley Weston style magazine talk about this wrestling. I'm pretty sure wrestling magazines like Wrestling World and all that, the non-Stanley Weston magazines did do stories on these organizations, these wrestling promotions, these matches. I know Wrestling World did a lot on XPW back in the day, so I would think that stuff like Combat Zone Wrestling and IWA Mid-South probably did get mentioned and shown in those magazines, more so than WWE or WCW or even ECW for that matter in the late 90s. So, all right, here's just a little video today about that. I was just kind of shocked to see that the magazines did a story on this style of wrestling. That itself is kind of neat. I'll say that is neat because I didn't think that ever existed in these magazines, and it was this one here proved me wrong. This magazine, if you want to get it, if you're a fan of Ian Rotten or that style of wrestling, it is the November 1996 one, of Inside Wrestling. The Steiner brothers are on the cover there. You got Shawn Michaels and Davey Boy Smith up in the top photo. And you got Rick Steiner giving, looks like Booker T, a bulldog off Scott's shoulders there. So, again, it's an interesting magazine. It's not too bad. You get stories on the King of the Ring, Sabu versus Shane Douglas battling for the ECW franchises in this one. And, of course, that match we just showed, the match that was too violent for any arena. So, if you want it, go out and try to find it, and good luck. And until I do my next video, I'll talk to you guys later.